Every day, across America, military-style raids are taking place.
Sir, Columbia Police, search warrant! Columbia Police, search warrant! Get out, get out! Police.
Local police, dressed like soldiers, break down doors in the hunt for drugs.
That's not what we tend to think of as policing in a democratic society. This is way out of proportion.
In the past, police SWAT teams were only used in extreme circumstances. Now, they're increasingly deployed for routine tasks.
They changed my whole perspective on talking. When I seen that, it's like it was somebody, like they just dropped a bomb. They don't care what they've done. They really don't.
Tonight, Fault Lines examines how a massive rise in the use of SWAT is redefining America's police. And we ask, who is really paying the price? In the US today, there are now tens of thousands of military-style police raids every year. But only the worst cases make the news. We've come to investigate one that took place in a rural town just north of Los Angeles.
It scared me so bad because they were just so military and huge guns and full gear, like huge. They were like puffed out like huge vests. They looked military to me, like they were going into a war.
Early in the morning, on June 27th, armed police from across LA County converged on the property of Eugene Mallerie and his wife, Tonya Pate. Their warrant said the property was being used as an illegal methamphetamine lab.
Well, the entire basis of the search warrant was that the investigating officer says that in spots downwind of the location, he was able, with certainty, to smell chemicals.
This is where I was. I was inside here, and the cop car was right up.
Tonya was in a trailer on the property, and her son Adrian was asleep in another trailer when she heard the police.
And it scared me so bad that I said, "Adrian, come out!" And that's when that guy told her, "Contain her." So she shoved me into the car and then put the handcuffs on really, really tight and pushed me into the car. And I said, "But that my son is in there."
A thorough search of the property turned up no sign of meth. Despite her pleas, the police wouldn't tell Tonya what they were looking for.
Every time I'd ask, she'd just say, "My detective will be here to talk to you. You just need to shut up. You know, I'm protecting my officers." I said, "From what?"
Right.
You know, and I said, "You're the one with all the guns." Everything is for a reason. Parked out here in the middle of the
Tonya was taken to the police station, but then released without charge. It was only on her return that she began to realize what had happened. During the raid, the armed officers entered the house where Tonya's 80-year-old husband was sleeping. Guns drawn, 6 sheriff's deputies made their way towards his bedroom.
I came back to the house and it was horrible. There was blood all over that bed. It was thick and it was running down the walkway. And there was a lot of it. And I was just like, oh my God.
Eugene had been shot 6 times. 5 of those shots were fatal wounds to the chest.
The bedding was saturated. Pillows were full of blood. Blood ran all the way down that side. I guess he laid over there and bled to death and died.
Eugene kept 2 guns next to his bed in latched boxes. The initial police report says the officers were confronted by an armed suspect.
So one of the guns
Yeah.
was potentially in this?
Yeah, but he didn't have enough time.
Because their story is that he was exiting,
Yeah.
holding a gun in
Yeah.
both hands and leveled it at the officers. And I think the
Yeah.
report says that he was actually killed outside the bedroom as he was coming out to confront
I got
them.
blood inside the room, and like I said, if he was walking this way or right there, there is no blood in this pathway nor on this rug.
Both Eugene's body and his gun were moved before investigators reached the scene.
Where the body drops, where the gun is. Why would you move any of these things? You know, okay, you say he shot at you, everything, he should be dropped where he's at, his gun should be in his hand. Why is everything moved? I don't believe Gene's gun was in his hand, that's why it was moved. I don't believe Gene was where you said, that's why he was moved.
During the raid, the police found cannabis on the property, and Tonya's son Adrian, who holds a medical marijuana license, was arrested. He's been charged with possession with intent to supply, a charge the family denies. Now, Tonya is fighting to clear her family's name and get answers about Eugene's death.
This is him, so happy at his birthday party, 80 years old. He was good.
He doesn't look like a dangerous man.
Anybody with authority, he was very respectful to them and praised them for their job. And I mean, he would give them thumbs up, fire department, sheriff department, pat him on the back, tell him you know, what a great job, what would we do without you guys, you know.
He just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain. Bodies all
It's Old Man River, that's what he's singing.
Yes.
You and me, we
His clothes and his shoes, they smell like him still in the bedroom, and I don't want to move them. You know, you just keep taking things away and then they're gone.
Yeah, it must be.
I don't want him to be gone, Sebastian. I don't want him to be gone.
Eugene's body was brought here to the LA County Coroner's Office for an autopsy. Shortly after, the county had the body cremated without Tonya's permission, and before she could get her own autopsy. We requested a copy of the coroner's report to better understand what happened during the raid. Tonya is now suing the county for wrongful death, and her lawyers say the police story is full of holes.
The decedent exited his bedroom with a .22 caliber handgun extended out and held with both hands. The deputy fired at the decedent 6 times, which dropped him to the bedroom floor. So any issues with that so far?
Yeah, absolutely. The shots are all reflected downward through Eugene's body. Eugene's 6'4". This indicates that he is not standing when he's shot. He's obviously down, probably in his bed.
At 6'4", right, the shooter would have to be like 8 feet tall to be able to shoot and have that same downward trajectory on a 6'4".
The weapon was moved by the officers before the coroner got there. Again, you're not supposed to tamper with the evidence.
What incentive is there for an officer to move it?
Maybe he thinks the guy could still be a threat and needs to kick the gun away from his hand.
Not with 6 fatal bullet holes through a body was this fellow going to move.
Okay, it says here they recovered the following: fluorescent lights, 2 grow lights, a ballast, which was on the other side of the grow room. They recovered a black gas mask. They recovered some scales, pill bottles that contained marijuana, a pill bottle that contained marijuana seeds, empty plastic bags, and a digital scale.
Let's justify killing an 80-year-old man in his house for a little bit of marijuana. That's where their argument is, I guess.
Mm-hmm. The larger picture, what would you say this says about the nature of the way that these raids are being carried out?
It's not only in our department here, it's across the country. We've seen an increased militarization of police departments. This is like SEAL Team 6 coming into your personal residence. There's no legitimate reason for the way they carried this out.
In Oakland, California, gunmen have taken over a passenger train. An elite SWAT team moves in to neutralize the threat. Highly trained units like this are crucial in such situations. This time, it's just a drill, part of a law enforcement training event called Urban Shield. It's the kind of scenario for which SWAT teams were first formed in the Los Angeles Police Department in the 1960s.
So SWAT had its genesis with that philosophy surrounding it and the philosophy of protecting life.
Stephen Downing was there at the time and says these units were only meant for the worst case scenarios.
These are military-style responses, military-style tactics, and military types of weaponry that are very, very dangerous in a civilian population.
Nowadays, while SWAT teams are still trained and equipped to deal with the very deadliest threats, what's changed is how they're being used.
Are you in this kind of situation a lot? Have you kind of ever been in
active
this?
shooters like this? I mean, anywhere it's far and few between, but yeah, it's always better to be prepared than not. So.
And save as many people as possible.
So are you guys full-time SWAT?
Yes.
Does that mean that you're like just permanently waiting for that kind of an event, or are you deployed on other kinds of operations?
No, I mean, the SWAT guys, on a daily basis, they're assigned to a lot of high crime areas. The administration directs them, hey, you guys go out to this area because we want to help suppress this.
Okay, so you train for this worst case scenario, but when that's not happening, you're put onto other kinds of operations.
Oh yeah, search warrants. The job scope is very, very vast.
If all you're doing is waiting for that once every 15-year deployment of some horrible tragedy, we've got to figure out some way to use them. What are we going to use them for? Let's do drug raids with them. Let's go into a high crime, lower socioeconomic areas, and let's patrol the streets with them. And that's where it becomes dangerous.
Peter Krasker has been studying the use of SWAT, or as he calls them, police paramilitary units, over the past 2 decades.
Once upon a time in the early 1980s, about maybe 20% of departments had a SWAT team. All of a sudden, by the year, the late 1999, 1998, we were looking at 80% of police departments. Small, medium, and large, all having them.
Based on his surveys, the number of SWAT raids have gone up by 1,400% since the 1980s. An estimated 50,000 now take place every year.
Upwards of 85 to 90% of those deployments are serving warrants, and mostly for drug offenses.
There have been SWAT raids on bars where they thought there was underage drinking going on, using these SWAT teams to break up poker games. There have been raids on, Amish farms and co-ops that sell unpasteurized milk products.
The percentage that goes wrong is very small. However, when it goes wrong, it goes extremely wrong.
As the use of SWAT expands, more and more innocent victims are being caught up in the raids. Columbia, Missouri. Local police raid the home of a man wrongly suspected of being a drug dealer. His family was left traumatized. Their dog executed on the spot. Ogden, Utah, a man is fatally shot with a golf club in his hand. The police were actually searching for his roommate. Pima County, Arizona, ex-Marine Jose Guerrera picks up a rifle to protect his family from what he believes to be a robbery. The police fired 70 rounds, hitting Guerrera 22 times. He never fired a shot. While the botched raids could be isolated incidents, those sounding the alarm say the rise of military-style tactics is changing police culture.
If you dress a guy like a soldier and you give him a soldier's weapons, you train him like a soldier, you send him out in the streets and tell him he's fighting a war, that's absolutely going to have an effect on mentality.
Meanwhile, the trend is being fueled by commercial interests. Outfitting SWAT teams is now a multi-million-dollar business, thanks to Homeland Security grants that flooded police departments post 9/11. Here at the Urban Shield event, private companies display their latest wares.
Welcome to Urban Shield. We have the watch.
DHS grants totaling more than $34 billion have been transferred to local police agencies.
The federal government has provided so much money, they've created this military-industrial complex for local police, for counterterrorism, for the drug war.
This really reminds me of the vehicles that I rode in with the US military in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's armored, it's got a gun turret on the roof. The fact that this is being used for policing is pretty surprising. This just looks like as heavy as it gets.
You go to these events and, the vendors' halls are, they're not even pretending to make any distinction between policing and military mindset.
Right, so you can hold that all day and still shoot me or drag me or save
But private companies aren't the only supplier. This is a promotional video for a federal program that transfers excess military equipment to civilian law enforcement agencies.
The U.S. military has acres and acres of surplus goods from our various conflicts around the world. And at one point, politicians said, why don't we just give this to the local police? Maybe they can use this stuff.
And the scale's pretty big. So we are dealing with thousands of law enforcement agencies in 49 of the 50 states and 3 of the territories.
Under the program, more than $4 billion worth of military equipment has been transferred, including Humvees, machine guns, and grenade launchers, all for free. Admiral Harnacek is in charge of the program.
So I'd much rather see these things put to great use, potentially saving the life of a citizen or a police officer than in the scrap heap somewhere.
Are there guidelines for how they use that equipment?
There are no guidelines from us. We exclusively leave that up to the law enforcement agency and how they utilize that.
Sumner County, Tennessee. Population less than 200,000 people. It's a region that boasts of being one of the finest places to live, work, and play in Tennessee.
Move quick, let's go, let's go, let's go. We got an officer down.
It also has its very own 18-man SWAT team. And last summer, they received something known as an MRAP through the federal program. It's a mine-resistant ambush protection vehicle. It was designed to protect US troops from roadside bombs in Iraq.
Now, once a month, we'll average.
Once a month?
Once a month,
okay.
we'll be in this.
Wow. But this is something that's not really designed for civilian use, right? This is a military vehicle.
We could get shot at any particular time.
Right.
Anytime. We sign on for that, yeah, but that don't necessarily mean we need to do it without tools readily available to use. That's all this is. It's a tool. This is no different than our gun.
The SWAT team is often used on drug warrants.
Everybody in?
Most of the time, the MRAP goes along too.
There is a criticism that whereby people are concerned that, stuff that's being used in conflict zones is now ending up in small towns in America. What's your response to that?
You've been in an MRAP?
I have.
It's a big truck with big thick steel on it. That's really all it is.
But it looks, it's
absolutely an imposing vehicle, but not a tank, not a Bradley, not an assault helicopter. It's a truck that we transport soldiers around so they're protected from, small arms fire and explosives on the battlefield. And in many police roles, they have exactly the same requirements.
One team's going first. Once you're through and out, then the second team will go in.
It teaches law enforcement to, when you tell them they're fighting a war, it teaches them to see everyone as not as a citizen with rights, not as somebody that they're supposed to be serving, but as a potential threat.
You just went in there and you killed something. Be looking for something else to get on target on.
Go!
The majority of the people here are good and law-abiding citizens and just good people, good southern hometown, area.
Yeah, it looks like a nice, kind of quiet
It's a nice place.
But then some people would say, so why do they need a SWAT team?
Because the possibility of what could go wrong.
So it's preparing for the worst, essentially.
Yeah, it's just preparing for the worst.
In civil society, the peace officer must deal with situations using only that force necessary to accomplish the objective. The peace officer shoots when it's absolutely necessary to stop the person from doing or from presenting the threat that they're presenting. That's the difference between a military mindset and a police officer's mindset. We are losing that in this society.
Actually, the day that it happened, I was at my job, and one of our other friends texted me like, you know what, there's a lot of SWAT at your compadre's house. Like, you might want to call him. So I text him, and I never got a text back.
On January the 5th, 2011, the Serrato family came home to find their street barricaded and their house surrounded by police in military gear. Rita Serrato's son, Roger, was inside the house. The police believed he was connected to a recent shooting.
Parecía que había un ejército adentro de mi casa, porque así lo hicieron ver. Nomás era una persona que no estaba armada.
I can't get January 5th out of my head.
You don't expect to see something like that in this neighborhood. Like I'm telling you, if they were looking for somebody that had bomb, like terrorists, like somebody of that level.
It was later determined Roger had nothing at all to do with the shooting. An armored vehicle known as a Bearcat was parked on the lawn, and the SWAT team threw in a flashbang grenade to get Roger out. For the next several hours, the SWAT team kept their rifles trained on the house.
How much time passed, can you remember?
Felt forever. Felt like he was in there for a long time.
And you could see the house
I could see the house on fire.
Me puse de rodillas con ellos y le dije, por favor, déjame pasar. Es mi hijo que está allá. Y dijo, pues si sigues tú molestando, te vamos a encerrar.
Witnesses say the police did little to save Roger from the burning house.
Why do you think he didn't run out of the house?
Scared. Scared.
Why do you think he would be scared?
There's so much force and guns and just, wouldn't you be?
By the time Roger was brought out, he was already dead from smoke inhalation. The Monterey County Sheriff's Department told us that, quote, appropriate law enforcement protocol was followed.
We grew up in this house like 20 years. It's just in my whole life, like our childhood just like crushed, demolished, like nobody even gave a shit.
Roger was 31 years old and a father of 4. Despite refusing to admit wrongdoing, the county paid the Serrato family several $1 million in an out-of-court settlement.
Quisieron es de dar miedo, daba miedo. Que como estamos ahorita, no importa el área que tú vivas, no importa, puede pasar. Lo mismo que pasó aquí, puede pasar.
I think we're moving toward a society where laws are more aggressively enforced and where law enforcement officers look to minimize the risk to themselves by transferring that risk on to the people that they're supposed to be serving.
For Tonya, her legal battle against those who killed her husband is still ongoing. An investigation by the district attorney concluded simply that the officers acted in self-defense. The LA County Sheriff's Department refused to discuss the case with us at all. But there's been no acknowledgement that anything other than their standard procedures were followed. But when the standard is a rise in military-style tactics, it means the costs are rising too.
with that room all bloody like that. It's been 5 months. I go in there every day. I relive it every day.